Grace and peace from our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. God has said, "Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." Hebrews 13:5. Let me begin this morning by telling you the tale of a family like you might know in a town not unlike Silver Bay. Once upon a time, there was a little girl whose grandpa would give her mother $100 at the start of each December to buy what mom wanted. Well, this December was different. Unlike most children, the little girl and her sister were dreading the upcoming Christmas. Their dad's business had been struggling. Finding money for food was a challenge, let alone money for presents. And every holiday advertisement would make the girls feel worse and worse. Being teenagers, they would see their classmates adorned with new clothes that they knew they themselves could not afford. And pretty soon, the girls just wished for Christmas to be over so that they didn't have to think about it anymore. But one day, Mom took the girls, for some odd reason, to the mall. She took her daughter to her favorite clothing store for some unknown purpose, as they weren't going to be able to afford anything. She had her daughter try on a dress that caught her eye. The fit was perfect, and the dress looked amazing. The daughter understood, though, that she could never own it. So Christmas kept approaching. The family, for the first time the daughter could remember, didn't even purchase a Christmas tree. One day, the girl noticed something about her mother. Her mother's shoes had holes in them that she wore every day over snow and ice without any complaint. Then Christmas Day arrives. There were no presents within eyesight. The family then gathers for breakfast when a huge smile comes over Mom's face. "Time for presents," Mom says. She goes into her bedroom, comes out with a present for each of her children. She hands a box to her daughter, and inside was the very dress that she had tried on at the mall. For Mom had spent every one of the $100 that her father had sent her on her children's presents. And the daughter had a new, most popular outfit in her wardrobe that she wore again and again. And every time she wore that dress, tears would come to her eyes as she remembered the depth of her mother's sacrifice so that she could wear it. Today's New Testament lesson comes to us from the 13th chapter of the book of Hebrews. Hebrews was a letter written to a group of Jewish Christians in Jerusalem, which seeks to give new meaning to the major Old Testament themes because of Christ's death and resurrection. Today's lesson is laid out in the story of the little girl, her mother, and the new dress, deals with the Old Testament theme of sacrifice. Now, stories of sacrifice are prominent throughout the Old Testament. The Old Testament's most important event, the Passover in Egypt, centers on instructing each household to sacrifice a lamb so that all the Israelites may escape the plague brought on by the angel of death. Such instructions involving animals would not have seemed odd to Israelites living in Egypt during the days of Moses. For sacrifice, as a way to bring about personal peace with God, was the central act of Old Testament worship. And leading these ceremonies was the role of the priest. The first 7 chapters of the book of Leviticus go into great detail, describing the 5 main types of sacrifice as a way to eliminate human guilt and sin. And the purpose of each of these sacrifices was to redeem someone's previously flawed relationship with God. For the most famous story of sacrifice takes place in Genesis chapter 22. Abraham waits years and years to have a son with his wife Sarah. The son Isaac is born when Abraham is already an old man. Then God asks Abraham to sacrifice Isaac right when he is about ready to enter adulthood. And Abraham is so faithful to God's promises that he takes Isaac to the top of a mountain with tears in his eyes and puts a knife to Isaac's throat. Now, at first glance, this appears to be a terrible story about God. In the year 1976, radio broadcaster Paul Harvey debuted a new radio series titled The Rest of the Story. Harvey's tales, which ran until his death, blended history and mystery and made Harvey a millionaire many times over. For Harvey had a gift, finding the most unlikely of outcomes in what seemed to be hopeless situations. So as soon as Abraham puts a knife to Isaac's throat, this merely begins the rest of the story. An angel immediately diverts Abraham's attention to a ram caught in a nearby bush. Abraham is then instructed to sacrifice the ram instead. For what this event pointed to is how God would soon put an end to the Old Testament sacrificial system upon a cross. And as we hear the tale of Abraham and Isaac, we wonder what exactly is the rest of the story for each one of us. Once upon a time, a Red Cross blood donor center in Oakland, California received an unexpected visitor. The visitor was a very frail old man. But what stood out even more than this man's age was his wardrobe. He had on his finest clothes as he requested to give blood. The nurse, upon seeing the man, began shaking her head. "You're too old to give blood." A sad look comes over the man's face. The man then responds to the nurse, "I know I would not be able to survive a blood donation. So instead, I dressed for my funeral. For I should have died happy, knowing that my death might mean life for someone, somewhere, far from home." For human life is ultimately connected to sacrifices like the one attempted by this older man. For you're not raised in this world without the sacrifices of your parents or other loved ones. One's last days are dependent on the sacrifices of time and talents of others, so that one may leave this world in comfort. And life after death only comes from the sacrifice that Jesus made for you. For sacrifice, above all else, is rooted in love. For Jesus declares within John's Gospel, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." For Christ sacrificing his life upon the cross is the rest of our salvation story, both now and forever. The point of our lesson is this, that Christ, because of his great love for you, is willing to go further for you than you can even imagine. The father of Afghanistan was a man named Ahmed Shah. Afghanistan had been divided for generations in tribal conflict until Shah's rule brought peace to the land. Shah's secret to peace was showing the Afghan tribes a secret valley that he had discovered. The valley had one hidden entrance through a ravine cut of a rock. And keeping the hidden entrance secret would not only build unity among the Afghan tribes, but keep them safe from all foreign invaders. Keeping the secret would be the Afghans' most important law. And under Ahmed Shah's reign, Afghanistan began to flourish, both culturally and economically. One day, though, Ahmed Shah's world would be turned upside down. One of his officers declared a major problem, as someone had broken the most important Afghan law and disclosed the location of the secret passage. The lieutenant began to explain to Ahmed Shah that the spies who got the secret were immediately captured and put to death. As for the Afghan traitor, Ahmed Shah was asked by the lieutenant, "What should I do?" The ruler declared, "Make an example of him. Tie him to a column in the middle of a city square and have him beaten to death for everyone to see. We must show that no man can put his desires over that of the whole nation. Do you hear me? 100 lashes in the city square." A very nervous look soon comes over the lieutenant's face. He begins to nervously declare, "But sir, your mother was the traitor." There was no more potentially significant crisis for Ahmed Shah. He knew that if word got out of this, that he would be ousted as ruler, and Afghanistan could eternally collapse, for he would be forced to choose between his mother and his nation. Ahmed Shah couldn't sleep as he wrestled with his decision. The next morning, he proceeds to announce his verdict. The prisoner must endure 100 lashes. Everyone soon gasped as they saw a little old lady dragged to the center of the square. A big, scary-looking man stood next to her, ready to dole out punishment. The first lash left a welt. The second lash drew blood. Her legs began to tremble. There was no way Ahmed Shah's mom could endure half a dozen of these blows, let alone 98 more. And as the executioner prepared for a third strike, Ahmed Shah yells out, "Stop! The penalty for my mother's crime was 100 lashes. She has paid 2 of them. Now I will pay the other 98. Those in attendance were speechless as they watched 98 strikes be applied to the ruler of the nation. Afterward, Ahmed Shah's fate hung in the balance for weeks before eventually surviving. And after this day, Ahmed Shah was held in such high regard amongst the Afghans that subsequent kings would be referred to as Shahs after him. For you see, what happened on Good Friday is this. Jesus saw a world that had received 2 lashes, and he went forth to take 98 additional lashes in our place, reminding us that there are indeed no limits to God's grace. So no matter what your sin, no sacrifice, even unto death, can ever be more complete than Christ for you upon a cross. So no matter where you are on this day, this is the rest of the story. Amen.